Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the super fortress of intelligent black thought. This is the BlackChannel.net radio program, and I am, of course, your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Sitting in with me tonight is the 4-star Admiral of Intelligent Black Society, Professor Black Truth. Welcome back to the Black Channel, brother.
B1 family.
As we are here on the born day of the immortal Dr. John Henry Clark, to let everyone know that the reason for this day's being special is because of the individuals who made it that way. We bury the man, we continue the plan, and continue the plan we shall. And we're glad to have you all with us here this evening. What we want to do here tonight is we want to do something a little bit different than we usually do here at the Black Channel. What we actually want to do is we want to have a 2016 year in review. That is something in particular that I think is definitely needed and necessary, and it is certainly something that we want to keep up with, because other people are going to try to tell you what to think of the events around you. We are a place that is going to make sure that you have it in proper perspective for your own good, and of course we'll wrap it up with where we're going for 2017. What happened in 2016? What happened? What happened in 2016 is white supremacy as an organism began engraving it into law, that they have their house niggas and coons on speed dial. They already have them organized, mobilized, and implanted into place in key positions where they are set and ready to execute what their white masters have put in front of them. You thought the worst that could happen was with Peter Liang, and then you see what happens in Baltimore. Now you're watching what's happening with Michael Slager. You thought if you avoided the white supremacists directly, you could make an end run around the system, and it doesn't work that way. You cannot piecemeal your way to freedom, justice, and liberation. You cannot piecemeal your way there. It's all or nothing. You're going all the way, or you ain't going at all. You are going to grab all of the levers of power. The city council, the mayor's office, the district attorney's office, the prosecutor's office, the police chief, the dog catcher, the ice cream salesman. You got to get them all. You cannot say, well, we're going to throw one little old raggedy ass punch and that'll be it. It does not work that way. Freedom is an all or nothing proposition. Either you get it all or you got nothing. You can't take it in bite-sized pieces. You're not going to be able to take twos and fews. So, Professor Truth, I think that what we learned is that 2016 was the year of a lot of things, but one of the main things that it was 2016 was the year of unveiling their black agents of white supremacy.
Yeah, and a lot of them are having to get retired a little bit sooner than they thought. I mean, one that comes to mind for me is Melissa Harris Perry. I mean, she was sitting here bashing black men back when bashing black men was still cool. And I guess she figured that she was pushing all the right buttons. As one of her sisters, Lee Daniels, would say, playing the game, playing the game. And what she found was under white supremacy, you don't play the game plays you. And so the good white folks over at MSNBC have been ethnically cleansing their ranks. This will do two things. It'll get rid of all those black faces that have been staring at their white audience members. But the second thing that it also does is it's going to help to make sure that any black people who come on there in the future understand you're only here at our pleasure, and you can be dismissed in a heartbeat, and we are not going to at all be bashful about it. That has psychological impact for a lot of black folks because you thought that MSNBC was the white liberal network. Well, maybe they had some liberal leanings when Keith Olbermann was there, but as Phil Griffin, who's the head of programming at MSNBC, said, the Keith Olbermann era is over. I guess the death knell for it came with the Comcast buyout. But Melissa Harris Perry isn't the only one. A lot of other folk wound up getting their shows clipped, wound up getting their wings clipped, and they're starting to look at their white benefactors in a different light. Because, Melissa Harris Perry might have burned her bridge with MSNBC, but I noticed that she's also been a lot less eager to even pretend that she's going to be calling out white supremacy. She's trying to just be a lukewarm, milquetoast social critic now. So a lot of these Negroes who thought that they were on the team, they're getting the wake up. They're understanding. And instead of it making them bolder, it's making them more cowardly. Not that that's actually not much of a step for them. They didn't have any guts to begin with. I mean, you look at the garbage that went down with Jamila Lemieux and Amber Phillips. They were just they didn't know whether to pee their pants or wind their watches. So they did both. Spewing lies, vituperations. And for what? Because they're hoping that if they show white supremacy that they're willing to throw black people, black men in specific, under the bus, even at this late date, this is going to make them more acceptable to the powers that be. Rather than get the breadcrumbs that they've been receiving, they're hoping that this is going to be a way to raise their profile. Well, you can't really blame them for that, at least that bit of delusion, that bit of self-deception. What the heck happened with Roland Martin? Roland Martin got himself booted from CNN because he decided that he was going to be a little bit too mouthy about what white people consider to be the only legitimate minority group, the only ones who they actually can stand, which is homosexuals, white homosexuals. And because of that, he got sent packing. And I guess Jamila Lemieux and Amber Phillips are thinking to themselves, if we just sit here and make enough noise for ourselves, we're going to somehow come to the attention of the white powers that be, and they shall elevate us. This is what happens when you got a bunch of black women who spend too much time holding hands with white women and singing songs and kumbaya with them. You ain't Milo Yiannopoulos. He can get a book deal. He can get put on every TV network so he can sit there and spew his filth. He can be elevated. You can't. It didn't slip my notice at all that Milo Snuffleupagus was at both the DNC and the RNC conventions. It didn't slip my notice that Jamila Lemieux and Amber Phillips were at neither of them. So what does that tell you? What it tells you is that any Negro who thinks that there is not a glass ceiling for them, or that white supremacy is at least going to punch a couple of holes in the glass ceiling so that they can feed them some extra large crumbs, you're crazy. White society has organized itself like a slave ship. And the Negroes will always be below decks. So that's the first thing that 2016 went ahead and made clear. A lot of the Negroes, the Negro whisperers, the token Negroes, the safe Negroes, the Negro best friends, the on-air talent who are rather on-air talentless, they wound up getting shown the door, getting put in their place. and the others are sitting here begging for crumbs that aren't coming. And this is good. This is very good. Now, the second thing that also happened this year, closely related to the first, you guys know the old crowdfunding hustle that was going on? Well, it seems that some people are finally catching on to the scam, and this year we saw a backlash against the crowdfunding hustle. It would have been nice to see it happen sooner, back when other people like Goldie Taylor were getting money and then not producing anything, but better late than never, I suppose. Because it seems that just about every mid-30s to mid-50s slacker, loser, con man, and so-called advice guru, these clowns who constantly were annoying everyone with their own self-styled talking points about personal responsibility, especially for one's finances, well, all of these folks wound up going on begging for money every 10 seconds. And it wasn't because of anything that they were doing or producing. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. They became so bold with their deception and dishonesty, they said people should just give us money to support ourselves because we were in Mexico and we ran out. And some still went farther than that. Some fakers, frauds, and phonies said, you need to go ahead and give me money so you can support my baller lifestyle. Well, that's 2 lies for the price of 1. Now, while not all of these scams have crashed and burned necessarily, most of them have. And people are finally sitting here going, before I give you a dime, I need to actually think this over. Before I break bread with you, I need to actually consider who the hell am I giving money to? Because people, these scam artists who previously were able to use their gullible and weak-willed audience bases, and base they are, for free money, all of a sudden they found the well coming up dry.
The method that they were using, and as a person myself who has been able to raise in the upper echelon percentages of crowdfunding, I kind of know a thing or two about this. And the fact that I actually was able to deliver what I said I was going to produce, I kind of know a thing or two about what I'm doing. And I want people to understand what they're seeing. What you're seeing are individuals running a new type of fraud. See, what they're doing is they go off and they're using the selfie strategy. They're using the TV strategy. If I can get on TV once or twice, or if I can take a selfie with somebody famous and just make that my thing. They don't produce anything. They don't show anything. Everything is about getting in your pockets. Let me explain to you how it works. When I did 7 a.m., I did it on my own. You all didn't even know I was out filming it. I went and did 7 a.m. myself. Paid for it on my own. And then I came back and showed everybody my proof of concept. 7 a.m. was not in the process of filming and can y'all help patch me together so we can get the rest of this done? It was in keeping with all the principles and business philosophies I've ever given you. Proof of concept, a prototype, showing people exactly what it is they're contributing to. That was everything we had said. Everything I've said before. And when I came back and did Gentrified, it was the exact same thing. I was off filming it, didn't say nothing to nobody. Came back and let you know, by the way, I've been working on a new project. Here's the first trailer for it. Here's 15 minutes Dr. Claude Anderson as you have never seen it before. Very well produced, very well organized. Thank you very much. You see, that's what you do when you've got something legitimate. You got your own money in it. If the only time that you say you're going to do something is, well, let me talk to other people, don't be surprised when nothing gets done. Goldie Taylor promised the whole damn world what she was going to do on the other side of grace. And I said it then that this is bull crap. Here we are now, 2 crowdfundings later. Other side of grace, and what was that, 44 blocks? Still no Goldie Taylor. Now she's got a job at the Daily Beast as an editor. Kind of like Jamila Lemieux. That's where they park their bedwenches. They're professional white man chasers. That's where they park them at, is an editor's job. But the editor's job can't be too damn cushy because all these hoes trying to get out of it. So if the editor's job was really such a great thing to have, why are all these wenches trying to get away from it? Oh, I'm sorry. Am I blowing up your spot? So they're going out and people, they're even playing on their own personal tragedies. Was that Brian Banks? Said he was going to make a movie. I'm still waiting on that, by the way. He said he was going to make a movie. Soon as he got the money, he grabbed him a white girl, and we ain't heard about the movie since. Not to my knowledge. Maybe some of you have heard something I haven't. But if you all can find Brian Banks' movie that he got that crowdfunding money to make, let me know. That kind of seems to be the thing that these Negroes do, by the way. People try to give them crowdfunding money. Next thing we know, they're posting up selfies with the first non-black female they can find. That's the way a scam works. The way business works is when you get the money, you start working. The way a scam works is you get the money and go hit the club. Go find some female company. That's the way scams work. And the pastor, preacher, televangelist hustle is in full steam today. Is running full speed. Got improvisations on it and everything. Feed my kids, feed my dog. And I hope that in 2017, we can start to change that dynamic. People, you need to be a lot more demanding, a lot more discriminating, and a lot less forgiving. You work hard for your money, and before someone should get $1 from you, they need to show you that they've worked hard to get it. And working hard to get it ain't doing like James Brown with a please, please, please. Working hard to get it is showing you that they can actually do something for their damn selves. God helps those who help themselves. Well, guess what? The same rule goes for me. If I see that you're moving and shaping, I'm going to help move and shape with you. But if you're coming up to me and saying, brother, can you spare a dime so I can move and shape? I don't think you're the person. You haven't demonstrated that you can lead 10% of the way. Why should I give you the other 90%? You haven't demonstrated you can lead 1%. A lot of folks out here sopping up a lot of money with nothing but their mouths. Haven't shown you anything. I've shown you footage, release dates, people, places, and that's the way it should be. But it's not going to stop here. P.T. Barnum was right. There's a sucker born every minute. And there'll be more. But a grown-ass man and a grown-ass woman should not be looking for other people to sit up here and donate to their daily bread. Or their medical bills. Or to replace their equipment. We got folks up here holding crowdfundings to replace a damn laptop. Folks clapping. Here you go. We got a damn trick culture out here. Where men and women are acting like some of these hoes and tricks. Give me that money. Okay, I'll trick it off.
And Jason, we need to make sure everyone understands this has to be a zero tolerance policy because, as I always like to say, it is not harmless when somebody like Goldie Taylor goes around sitting here holding multiple crowdfundings and producing nothing. Because the thing is, the white media loves to hold up pseudo black spokespeople like her, and they'll sit there and she'll be the one recklessly using the terms that we have helped to establish as the vocabulary of black empowerment, and they can use someone like her to, in part, if not in total, discredit legitimate new black media. I mean, you had guys like Mike Cernovich. He confronted Goldie on Twitter, asking, hey, two different crowdfundings with the same name. Is either one of them finished yet? And Goldie Taylor deleted all of her tweets related to her little would-be documentary. See, it's amazing. They know about this stuff. You know damn well if they know about Goldie Taylor getting $23,000 for her 89 Blocks documentary, you know full well that they know about both 7 a.m. and Gentrified. They know. But for some strange reason, we haven't gotten any calls or communications from these guys. What does that tell you about the white media? As I always keep telling you, they're not looking for allies, even your white liberal pals. They're looking for victims. They're looking for targets in the black community. They don't mind elevating some know-nothing Negro or spotlighting some know-nothing Negro if they can be used to discredit us, the ones who are actually doing stuff, the ones who are actually putting things out there. So if you're a black person who produces, the white media is not looking to help you. But the dusty Hotep hustlers, the crowdfunding con game, I think that they've hit a wall, and Jason and I are proud of the part that we have played in that, and you should be proud of the part that you've played in it as well. We're playing economic hardball across the line, just across the board. Your ribs will touch your backbone before I see you get one thin penny from me, coming to me talking about how you got some sob story. Well, cry me a river. Those days are done. Now, what 2016 also did was it was the summer of our discontent. A couple of events went down in this very hot summer that became even hotter in Dallas and Baton Rouge. There was heat falling from the sun. And from what I've read, apparently hot lead flying as well. And people were shocked and just couldn't believe the things that they were seeing. White supremacy was quaking in its boots in July 2016 because people who thought that they were untouchable found out they could be touched. People who thought that they had successfully cowed and intimidated black men found themselves on the receiving end of all of that societal violence. And they were scared that it was going to be the beginning of a trend. They were scared that July 2016 was going to become habit forming. So 2016 marked a point where perhaps a mental wall had been broken. We don't know. These things have yet to play themselves out. But July 2016 also made it where when the white media says, you need to denounce this guy over here in Dallas and you need to denounce this other guy over here in Baton Rouge, black people said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do just like white people do. We're not going to sit here and say that if these allegations are true that we support it, but we're not throwing these brothers away either. What? Yeah, you can go ahead and pass every Blue Lives Matters law that you want. At the end of the day, a piece of paper is not going to protect you. Ask Philandro Castile. So summer 2016 is going to be remembered as the month that certain brothers decided that maybe they'd had just about enough. The straw that broke the camel's back.
Notice has been noticeably quieter in those cities, by the way. Baton Rouge has been on their P's and Q's and haven't had a whole lot of Dallas except for this incident in Fort Worth, which of course needs to be followed up on. Clearly they're a little bit more hard-headed about getting the message, obviously. But it's interesting how things got noticeably quieter in those parts. Just an observation.
Oh yeah, they've been on their best behavior since the summer. I mean, the Dallas PD, who only the white media would ever accuse of being courteous and professional, man, for some strange reason, they just haven't been as gung-ho. And the Baton Rouge PD, half their membership comprised of the Klan, the other half comprised of unreconstructed house Negroes. Those guys have also been a lot more quiet. Gee, I wonder why. See, you can teach old dogs new tricks. You just got to make sure you got a stick that's hard enough to crack those heads. And speaking of the summer of discontent, our boy, Colin Kaepernick, took a stand by taking a knee. Never before has a man who said nothing and, truth be told, did nothing, got under the skin of so many white people. They were just ripping their hair out because the psychological comfort that black athletes bring to white people, they are the proof of the big bad black man has been broken. All you got to do is give him a couple of white dollars, or better yet, a white woman, and he'll be under control at that point. He won't complain. Why, you could always point to those NFL players and NBA players. White people always point to them. See, this is proof that America's not racist. See? Why, Colin Kaepernick's got over $1 million. That means that America's not racist. And then you got these previously safe Negroes sitting here going, no, America's racist as hell. And we may get out here and play, but we're gonna go ahead and show you what we think of your national anthem and your flag. That means something to white people, because white supremacy is not about 80% control. It's not about 90% control. It is not even about 97% control. Hell, it ain't even about 99%. It is 100%. White supremacy means utter and complete white control. And what that means is they control you directly through the paycheck, but they also control you indirectly through the fact that they have cut off any and all other avenues for you to be able to support yourself. They control, what's that old saying for that old TV show? We control the horizontal and the vertical. Look what they did to Barry Bonds. We'll label you. We will anathematize you. We'll slander you. We'll smear you. And you won't have the ability to fight back because we control all avenues of media. They say that the newspapers are the first draft of history, and that's what they're playing on. We're going to go ahead and show you how you're going to be remembered. We'll go ahead and give you a taste of it. Oh, we'll label you controversial. Colin Kaepernick said you can label me anything you want. You can also label me a leader because the rest of these brothers are going with me, and sure enough, they saw more and more black men raising the iron fist. In stadiums full of white people, they saw black men weren't scared, and that's what frightens them the most. They need for black people to be intimidated and cowed, and Negroes who are just so afraid that they're going to say or do something that offends white folks. They've spent 500 years programming black people what to think, how to act, and how to react. They got the script all laid out.
Also, another thing from the Kaepernick situation is notice the strategy of all-in indictment. inclusive indictment. Anybody you know, guilt by association. Now with Dylan Ruff and his kind, it's always an isolated incident. Michael Slager, they haven't grabbed any other cops who helped him. Peter Liang, they didn't grab anybody else who helped him. And all these individuals had help in the crimes and the murders that they committed. Colin Kaepernick hurt and killed no one. And yet, they tried to find anybody and everybody they could to lump in with him. They went after his girlfriend, Nessa. They tried to say that she was the reason that he's taken a stance like this. Oh, that she's hardcore. She's some type of Muslim Islamic extremist, and she's always against America. That is the problem. They didn't just stop with Kaepernick and say he's responsible for his own actions. No, they said let's see if we can connect some other folk and take the rest of you down. They never miss an opportunity like that. Now, they didn't do that with Milo Yiannopoulos. Didn't do that with him. It's just him. Richard Spencer, they're not doing that with him. They're not trying to find the associates and degrees of separation between him and other individuals. Not even trying to do that. But with black people, the first thing they do is say, "Aye, nigga, who else you know? Who else can we attach to you? How many of the rest of you can we knock down like dominoes?" There's a story that came out today that said that Hollywood had a record year in 2016 and that it was mostly driven by films that were not reality based. That none of the top 10 films were reality based films. That it was stuff like Finding Dora and Rogue One, the Star Wars thing. That people want escapism. They want fantasy. And this is why what Kaepernick did was so inexcusable and unforgivable to them. Because this was their leisure time where they can say everything in America is all right. We don't have to hear anybody telling us that this is a system of white supremacy. We don't have to hear anybody reminding us of our sins. And as soon as they sit down to crack open a brew for the game, here he comes. They're supposed to watch the game and feel in complete control, and they can't even sit down and watch their games and feel in control. Can't even do that. So that was a watershed event, especially when other men started supporting him. And understand something. History will remember heroes like Colin Kaepernick, and it will remember all of its cowards and traitors too. And all the others who sat there standing next to him. I ain't gonna make these white folks upset with me. No, I ain't gonna do that there. I ain't gonna get me mad. I ain't gonna get you mad at me now. Just understand, history will remember you too. Just nowhere near as fondly. It will not remember you.
Because that's one of their favorite tactics, sitting there deciding that they're going to do the all-in thing. And black people, of course, conditioned by 500 years of white supremacy, are terrified that white people are going to come up to them and disapprove. So they sit there and put the microphone in every black person's face. What do you think about Colin Kaepernick? What do you think? Anti-American, disrespecting the flag. And we're sitting here taking our cues. Oh, don't want to make these white people unhappy with this. So, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'd have done it that way. So, of course, what they do is they're trying to put together a demo reel, a compilation of a bunch of Negroes, and there's always a few weak-willed, knobby-kneed who are sitting here equivocating when they should be doubling down. Instead, they're backing down, and that's what's going on. So, yeah, we want to make it where it's not cool to knuckle under to white supremacy. It's not cool to sit there and decide I'm going to continue lying to white people for the sake of peace. Well, it ain't peace, folks. It's freaking quiet suffering that you're doing. That's not peace. Colin Kaepernick Time magazine, put him on the cover. Hell, the man needs to be on the cover of every magazine in America. The guy should be in textbooks for children to read about. Because Colin Kaepernick did the things necessary to immortalize a man in history. As opposed to some of the others who shall go unnamed, who also immortalized themselves, but for the exact opposite reason. It's a brand new day. The white media may still have the bigger media megaphone, but they ain't got the only one anymore. And the black community that you're depending upon for support when the white people get tired of you, they ain't going to be there for you. We know that they won't be there for you because we're the ones who are going to say, don't be there for them. You want an example? How about a good one? Barack Obama. Remember how here he was at the end of Hillary's failed campaign, and the only thing he could do was to demand that black people turn out to defend his legacy? Oh, that was a Kodak moment for 2016, now wasn't it? If y'all really want to preserve my legacy, you need to go ahead and vote for Hillary. Can you believe that?
I guess he got his answer on that one.
Well, as he saw it, it's all about him. The capstone to his presidency, he thought, was going to be that he was going to be the first president since the 1980s to successfully hold the White House for more than 8 years. We told you about that years ago. We told you about that at the beginning of his administration. He was the guy's a mountain climber. As far as he was concerned, first black president of the Harvard Law Review, first black president, sort of black president of the United States. And he was like, I'm going to go ahead and show everybody how superlative I am because I'm going to be the first guy since Ronald Reagan to make sure that one party controls the White House for more than just 2 terms. And he was going to build his legacy on our dead bodies. He sat there and he decided that he was going to deride Kanye West as being a jackass. Ain't that the pot calling the kettle black? He didn't have anything to say about Joe Wilson screaming liar at a State of the Union address. You had that governor of Arizona, Ann Brewer, on the tarmac screaming and yelling at the president, wagging her finger in his face, put on a show for her little white supremacist buddies. He didn't think that she was a jackass. You got Donald Trump sitting here questioning whether or not he's president or even an American. Donald Trump's not a jackass. But he had no problem saying that Kanye West, who actually for a hot minute spoke up for black people, apparently that guy's a jackass. He had no problem with Hillary Clinton, who put in place the 96 omnibus crime bill that hypercharged the American anti-black gulag. He had no problem holding hands with Hillary and saying you need to vote for her. But when it comes to black politicians, especially at the local level, all of a sudden President Empty Suit is MIA. And he's got the nerve to talk about his legacy. He goes dancing on Ellen DeGeneres' show. He decides that he's going to go palling around with Jerry Seinfeld. Seinfeld, who was lifelong buddies with Michael Richards. You know, Michael, there's a nigger, Richards. He's cool with that. He'll go talk to Mark Maron in his barn. He'll go on Fox News. But he ain't got nothing to say to intelligent black society. He has nothing to say to any of the standard bearers of new black media. Now, what does that tell you? He don't mind running around with Jimmy Kimmel. And who's that other fat white man on ABC? I don't watch TV, so I don't know. He's got no problem with that. Why, he'll even go and talk to Bill O'Reilly. But when it comes time to talk to black people, he's not looking for a conversation. He's looking for a photo op so he can be seen on the cameras lecturing black people about what they are and are not doing, what they should and should not be doing. But white people who are wagging their fingers in his face and making a freaking mockery of him, he ain't got nothing to say. Turn out and defend my legacy. Nah, Barry. That might have worked back in the day when the white media had the only megaphone. and black people didn't have a platform. But now that we've got just the beginning of a platform, this ain't even really a platform. Intelligent Black Society right now is just a couple of planks. We ain't even built the platform yet. But we can use one of those planks as a 2x4 to smack some of these clowns upside the head. Even the President of the United States found that his complete voter base, the black population, even the Republicans sat there and said Barack Obama would not be president if it were not for the fact that the black population turned out in unprecedented numbers for him. They understand when Bill O'Reilly was sitting there saying the America that we thought we knew is gone. The old America is gone. The traditional America is gone. What he meant was white America is gone, and 13% of the population buried it. Black folks, you got a hell of a lot more power than you think if you use it. But that means you got to get off this script that white society's put in front of you. Now, speaking of which, thanks to Intelligent Black Society, Obama failed to get his little legacy vanity project put in place because we aggressively identified our enemies and punished them. Just this once, we punished them. And the coons and the bedwenches and the white supremacist apologists and collaborators are finding themselves slowly but surely, inexorably marginalized by new black media. And they're scared of us, folks. They're scared. They dare not even mention our names. They're not about to sit here and talk trash to us. Because A, they're thinking, well, we can't stop these guys from rising. We cannot stop their influence, but hopefully we can slow it down if we just don't give them any more exposure. Well, we didn't come to you. We didn't need you to gain our current position. That means we don't need you to keep it. And if all you got are a couple of bootlicking Negroes like Roly-Poly Martin who are desperate for their old jobs back, and they're willing to go begging for crumbs from their former white benefactors, if that's going to be your army to take on the B-1 Brigade, you're going to need a bigger army. Because you see, right now, the white media, while they're sitting here pretending not to like Donald Trump, meanwhile, Les Moonves, chairman of CBS television, he was sitting there saying that he loved Donald Trump. Not that he loved his politics. He's like, can't stand the guy's politics, and he's obnoxious, but I love Donald Trump anyway. Why you love Donald Trump? Because he's been a gold mine for our ratings. Those are the words he used. White media looks at Donald Trump as media as just ratings gold. They understand the nature of the game that they're playing. Kind of like Richard Spencer. GQ is sitting here giving him spreads where they're portraying him as if basically he's almost like a movie star, because I guess to them he is. A lot more white males than are willing to admit to it they understand the racial code words like politically correct. They understand that. They like seeing a white guy who gets out there and says, hey, other white guys, our position's kind of being challenged here, and the same white supremacy that I'm depending on for my daily bread, you depend on it too, so wink, wink, nod, nod. Gonna need some exposure here, gonna need you guys to give us a push, and they did. And they did. The white media was the same group who 100 years ago was putting Amos and Andy out there. Did you know that Amos and Andy was so popular in America that during the hour or so that the Amos and Andy radio show was on, that crime dropped in America during that hour? Did you know that? That is what they did. The same white media that made Al Jolson a household word, the same white media that celebrated Strom Thurmond, is the same white media that's telling you that Donald Trump is ratings gold to them. And that's just what the white media is doing in terms of the political offensive. In 2016, we have seen, and there's a lot of stories that have only gotten brief coverage, even here, but there's a lot of white folks at the local TV stations and your local newspapers who have been showing their white supremacist colors. They've been letting their Klan robes show. And you wonder why it is that on the nightly news, the crime blotter is always dominated by only black people. White guy goes and slaughters a family of 5. It flies under the radar. They just ignore it. But a black kid gets accused of being a purse snatcher. Film at 5 and 6 and 10 and 11. And the next day. Yeah, that's what the white media sees their position as. And they're also going to make a new counteroffensive in non-political media. Get ready to see the next offensive take place in so-called entertainment. They're rolling all this stuff back. You sat there and thought that the days of, John Amos, to the best of his ability, portraying a strong black father, even against freaking Norman Lear's wishes. Nah, they're going to be taking us back to Amos and Andy. And who's going to be leading the charge? They're hand-picked, cherry-picked Negroes. The white media right now is trying to dial us in for another 40 years of this garbage. And they're elevating people like Issa Rae. The Rap had a little news story that they put up a few days ago, or rather a couple of weeks ago. And what they were talking about was 10 breakout TV stars of 2016. And wouldn't you know it, one of them was Issa Rae. Now, everybody else pretty much only had one sentence, maybe 2, but this is what they wrote about Issa Rae. Quote, "It's not easy to make a successful transition from YouTube sensation to TV star. But awkward black girl creator and star Issa Rae did just that with Insecure, and HBO has already ordered a 2nd season of her sitcom."
Never mind the fact that the ratings are abysmal. Never mind that. Never mind the fact that her ratings are so low they might as well be non-existent. Just never mind that altogether.
Oh, she thinks she's going to be the next freaking Lena Dunham, and she will be. Lena Dunham was taking pot shots at black men and black people in particular, left, right, and center, lampooning black people, and Issa Rae does the same thing. Now, you're not going to see Issa Rae taking any pot shots at white people. She's not going to be lampooning white Jewish women in New York.
Better yet, she's not going to be lampooning white men at all. The white men are going to be shown as serious and people that you can take seriously. She won't be making a regular effort of lampooning them, period. She didn't do it on YouTube. When she was on YouTube, she didn't do it. And she's definitely not going to do it when they're footing the bill directly.
Exactly. She's going to make sure that she pushes the safe space for white people. White people will know. You can feel comfortable watching her show. She's a good Negro. And they call her a YouTube sensation. How in the world do you take somebody who gets, 50,000 views and they're a sensation? Well, they're a sensation because the white media says so. Now, believe it or not, they actually had Mike Coulter in their little deal, but Mike Coulter hasn't gotten the push that Issa Rae's gotten. Luke Cage broke the internet. Literally. But the white media treats that like a non-event. Issa Rae has a couple of YouTube views. She has one moderately successful crowdfunding, which only got 50,000, despite her having total support from every white-owned media outlet you can think of, and yet she's being described as a phenom. They're sitting here calling her a sensation. The next big thing. How in the hell? See, as Jason keeps telling you, when they control the TV cameras and they control the websites and you don't think it's important to get any media real estate, they use the media to program people. We've told you a million times, the people who own the media, they don't see themselves as being in the business of entertainment. They see themselves as being in the business of mind control. So you get some wannabe, unfunny hack who takes a page out of Chandra Rhimes' playbook and dramatizes her psychosexual fantasies about white males. And the people at HBO look at her and go, here's a useful idiot if you ever saw one. How'd you like a show so you can go ahead and do this for the masses? Give you some money, more than that 50,000 you got. I mean, seriously, if you saw somebody who holds a crowdfunding and all they can manage to get is $50,000, is that somebody you would look at and say, yeah, I think that we should pluck this person from obscurity and let's go ahead and make them a TV star. Let's give them their own TV show. I'm sorry. But anyone who actually deals in real media for the sake of making a business out of it, you're looking at 50,000 and going, if that's all she's able to get, can we see who the world is actually watching what she does? Because you see, the one thing that they didn't say about Issa Rae's show is that the ratings were just all that. They were not. HBO is a subscriber service. So they don't really operate on the basis of ratings like that. There are shows like Game of Thrones and The Sopranos and now Westworld. There are shows that they depend on like that to pay the bills, to bring in people, to bring in eyeballs, and hopefully the right kind of eyeballs. But then there are other shows that they make because they like the entertainment that they're seeing, like HBO's The Wire. And while The Wire was technically, I suppose it was, a bunch of well-chosen words. Technically, there were some okay things about it. The truth of the matter was, as a show, it was a horror show.
Yeah, it was. The Wire was never a ratings monster. I was never really a ratings grabber, but it got critical acclaim. And HBO kept it because it made the critics happy. They liked the show. So basically, it was their way of showing that they had a quality quotient. So they were willing to let The Wire be there as a loss leader in order to demonstrate to the critics, to win the critics over to HBO being a outlet for legitimate, quote unquote, quality storytelling and entertainment like that. That was the only reason for keeping The Wire.
That and the fact that you get to show black kids in Baltimore, 10 and 11-year-olds dealing crack. That never hurts. But yeah, HBO being a subscriber service, they get to basically have their cake and eat it too. And that's where Lena Dunham came from. I mean, Lena Dunham's family's connected in entertainment. So that being the case, it was okay to let her have a show that went on for a little bit, no matter how obnoxious she was. And now the torch, or rather the bucket of manure, is being handed over to Issa Rae. And you can bet that what you've seen before, Jason did a brilliant breakdown of the pilot episode of that little crap fest. You better believe it's going to get even worse. It will have to. What, you think they gave her a platform because they want to have gloves on when they take swings at black men? Hell no, they brought her on there so that this could be the thin end of the wedge.
And by the way, do you all think she's even writing this? At least you could say she was writing what was on YouTube. Are you all really stupid enough to think that Issa Rae is writing this?
That she doesn't have a writer's room? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a whole group of writers on for her little show, I'll bet. And how many of them are black? Not that that matters. You better believe that she's taken notes from the network and they're sitting here saying, this is what we need, this is the direction it should go in. And season 1 has already been I'm sure, I haven't even seen it, but I don't have to because I know what the world she's about. Taking pot shots at black men, but it's going to get worse, even worse. It will have to. Because you don't sit there and take some otherwise low-profile, kind of hack and give her a TV show simply on the basis of, well, we think that she'll do good work. Hell, as Stephen King put it, talent is as common as table salt. And I would add to that, in the world of media, it's the ability to obey the most odious and sickening of orders that makes for success in the white media world. George Clayton Johnson, who was a brilliant writer. He was the guy who wrote Logan's Run. And he also started off writing for the Twilight Zone back in the 50s. He, before he died, obviously before he died, he did a panel with a bunch of sci-fi writers. And I found it very interesting what he said, because he was more of a philosopher, good old boy philosopher, than he was a writer. And one of the things he said was, people ask him all the time, why is it that you haven't had more of your stuff produced? And he said, because I couldn't write the stuff that they were telling me to write. He said, every week it's the same. Look what they put on TV. Every week it's the same thing. All we see are the dead and the dying, or we see some horrible disease through a microscope. And I love what he said next. He said, what are they preparing us for? I love that. George Clayton Johnson, he had some freaking integrity. He looked and said, you know, there are things I'll write and things I won't. Issa Rae, I'm willing to bet this is just another media whore prostituting herself to the highest bidder. And I can't really blame her. I mean, when you're a low talent like that, you're pretty much going to take the money from anyone you can get it from. Because let's face it, do you think that Issa Rae would actually ascribe value to anything that she's written? Seriously? If it wasn't for the white people giving her a pat on the back for the benefit they're going to get out of her, she can be their black front person to push the crap and sling the slop. She knows the game that she's playing, and she probably thinks that she's going to parlay it into a successful career. She won't. I mean, the one Negro at a time rule applies especially for black quote-unquote producers. You got Shonda Rhimes on ABC, and that's all you're going to get. There won't be another black producer on that network. You got Lee Daniels, kinda, on Fox, and that's all you're going to get. You got 50 Cent on Starz, and that's all you're going to get. And you got Issa Rae on HBO, and that's all you're going to get. So looking forward into 2017, we see that 2016 is the year that the white media has decided to install one or two extra black front people to help sell the soap. And we shall be keeping tabs on them for the sake of making sure you never forget these are the mouthpieces for white supremacy. They're going to be the new black faces telling you why it's okay to lampoon black men. Isn't that amazing? I mean, people get into media. Most of the people who get in the media do it for one of two reasons. They do it because they're passionate about the medium, or in many cases, they do it because they can't stand what they're seeing and they want to see something different. That's what Keenan Ivory Wayans got into it for. He said one of my favorite sayings, that if there's something you want to see on TV, you're going to have to make it yourself. And he was right. But that's how media works. Either you get into the game because you want to be part of the sewer, or you get into it because you're tired of being flooded with filth. But there is a silver lining to the dark clouds that are forming, and that one in particular is 2016 became the year that it's official. White ancient Egyptians are no longer okay. The film Gods of Egypt was pretty much Hollywood's last gasp at trying to prop up the idea of a white Egypt as a whole. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit premature. Because even with the earth-shattering failure of Gods of Egypt, and I made the mistake of actually taking a look at that movie on video, and I can tell you right now, I would love to say that this movie was so bad it was good, but no, it was just so bad it was bad. Everything about it was wrong. You could tell that Gerard Butler was sitting there going, you know, I can't believe they actually talked me into this.
Well, I saw both Exodus and Gods of Egypt. I talked about both of them, I believe, before. I saw both Exodus and Gods of Egypt. Exodus was just too long and boring. It really, really was. Cecil B. DeMille, Ridley Scott is not. Gods of Egypt, I saw that movie also. For free. I saw that movie also. But I have to tell you, I didn't think it was an awful movie. I just thought it was not well put together as far as what they were trying to do. Alex Proyas probably could have been a great director once upon a time, but then again, maybe not, because the only thing he really has to his name is The Crow, and I think Knowing, and maybe he could have once, but this movie did not come together. The real issue with both of them is that they played into every horrific stereotype that we've ever seen as far as the promotion of the European Egyptian. All the important people, all the pharaohs and the leaders and their wives, all the aristocracy were white. And they made sure to have a high number of black people, but only in servant roles and subservient roles. Now, they did have one of the gods in Gods of Egypt. He was the god of knowledge, and he was black right before he got run through, that is. But other than that, all the blacks were the drummers and the horn players for the fanfare, as all of the servants are bringing their presents and salutations to the white gods of Egypt. That was in the movie Gods of Egypt. The black folk are just there as part of the peons, part of the unwashed masses. They are just part of the citizenry. Same thing in Exodus, and they're trying to make a point to you with that. That they get it, that they hear what we're saying, and they're acknowledging, oh, well, we always told you that Egypt was white. Well, okay, fine. It wasn't all white, but only there were some black people there, but not in any important capacity. They were servants, slaves, helpers, but not in any significant capacity, not in any position of consequence. And it backfired horribly. It blew up in their faces magnificently, to the point now that in Hollywood there has been a full tilt stop on any type of movies endeavoring to go into Egypt at all. And some people would say, well, Jason, if they aren't going to make any more movies about Egypt in the foreseeable future, does that not play badly against your desire for movies to be made about black Egyptians? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because, as the man once said, if it becomes so odious you cannot take part, not even passively. And we are here to show you that if the machine will not work in our interests, then the machine will simply not work at all. If you're going to use this machine to harm us, if you cannot use it for our benefit, then the machine should simply not be turned on. So as far as I'm concerned, shut this bastard down. If we're not going to make a movie that shows Egypt properly, then we just don't need to make any Egyptian movies at all. And if it takes 100 years for black folk to get around to making one, then we'll just wait 100 years.
But we need to make sure we take note, because I might have been a little premature when I said that basically this was it. They are making one last Hail Mary try, and you got to give them credit for this. They're basically betting everything on this. It's an all or nothing proposition. Universal Studios is trying to restart their monster movie line, and they've announced that there's going to be a new Mummy movie, but it ain't going to be Brendan Fraser this time. By the way, it was the Mummy movies that Gods of Egypt was basically trying to pattern itself off, fit into that shtick. But this new Mummy movie is starring Tom Cruise.
Which means it's already facing a headwind, but go ahead.
And yeah, the mummy this time is going to be a female one. There's a switch. But she'll still be white, Caucasoid, whatever. But the guy who wrote and directed the movie is Alex Kurtzman. Now, Alex Kurtzman, for those of you who don't know, He's a brilliant Hollywood screenwriter, one of the best Hollywood screenwriters. He's written some of the best movies of the last 10 years.
Sure.
Movies like The Island. Oh, what, you don't remember that classic? Okay, well, maybe you remember this other one, Cowboys and Aliens. Oh, don't remember that one either, huh? Well, how about that modern classic Transformers? You know, when I was a kid, I actually liked Transformers. Not after they were done, not after Alex Kurtzman was done with it.
Yeah.
And he also wrote Mission Impossible 3, a movie so bad it almost sunk Tom Cruise's career.
It was the only one that nobody wants to talk about.
He then went on to write other wonderful fare, like the 2 Star Trek movies, the first of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. I mean, everything he writes is pure crap. Just garbage. Unless it's attached to a pre-existing franchise, nobody even goes to see it. So they chose him to be the director for Tom Cruise's Mummy movie. Well, this has gotten quality written all over it now, doesn't it? So this is who they're looking at, and I have no doubt that Alex Kurtzman's no better a director than he is a screenwriter, so this thing will crash and burn. But the point is, look what they're doing. They're not sitting here saying, maybe we should do a smaller scale thing and see if we can build. They're like, no, hell no. We got to push back and push back hard. We need one of, if not the most bankable star in the history of Hollywood. Tell him we'll pay him whatever he wants. There is an enormous amount of mind share that white supremacy is attempting to protect. You seem to think that this is all entertainment, but it ain't. It's serious. I did an entire video series talking about how white Hollywood and white media have manufactured an entire image library of white Egyptians. So that what happens is when you see black Egyptians, the real Egyptians, you sit there and you have a moment of cognitive dissonance. Because how bold the white media is being with their lies. It's like, well, there must be something to it. No one would be this bold with the lie, right? They're the same people who said that black people had tails. Did they tell the truth about that one either? So we see this Hail Mary pass taking shape. And even though this is going to be yet another of Tom Cruise's flops, where they're going to go ahead and push this thing anyway. But white Egyptians have died in 2016. We went ahead and buried them and then took their bones up to the hills and caves of Europe and dumped them there. They don't get to be in the hallowed soil of Africa. But we would be highly remiss if we did not also mention, since this is a 2016 year in review, 2016 is also the year that white supremacy went mainstream. Again, it's the year that Richard Spencer and Carl Palladino and Rupert Murdoch and all the rest of the scum decided that they were going to just come out and say what they've been sitting on for a while. It's the year that Stormfront-generated talking points started getting spoken openly on broadcast media. It's the year that presidential candidates began retweeting blatantly, demonstrably false talking points that black people are responsible for 90% of the murders in America. It's the year that the crap posted in comment sections started being spoken by people who allegedly ought to know better. And just in a side note here, I did a video talking about Roger Ailes, the fall of Roger Ailes and why he's not going away. And if you haven't seen that video, you need to go ahead and stop by my YouTube channel. Just put Professor Black Truth into the search engine. It'll take you right there. But I talked to you about how these right-wing conservative think tanks began the process of trying to put this anti-black propaganda out. And you look at people like Heather McDonald. She's been the one who was most responsible for putting out a lot of these lying talking points about the war on cops, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm putting together a video that's going to be debunking one of her latest talking points that you heard Tommy Lauren try to pull out against Trevor Noah, where they were saying that more blacks kill cops than cops kill blacks. Well, when you read what Heather McDonald wrote, it becomes understandable that people would sit there and say something so stupid. By the way, just for the record, the number of cops allegedly killed by black people, 22. On the average is 22. Usually it's around 18, but this year the average kind of went up. But the number of black people killed by police, documented by the Washington Post, annually 255. So how the hell can you sit there and have it where literally 10 times the number of black people are being killed by cops than cops by black people, and say it's the other way around? Because Heather McDonald sat there and she did this mumbo jumbo with words where she says, well, per capita, if you look at the fact that there's, she said something like 600,000 cops in America. Actually, the number is closer to 1 million. And then you look at the fact that there's 40 million black people or whatever. She says, well, per capita. And I'm sitting here going, well, if you're concerned about the per capita, then shouldn't we also be looking at the number of unarmed black people versus armed black people killed by police? See, that's the whole point of these think tanks. It is not harmless when you have racist ideologues like Joseph Coors, who put their family fortunes into creating these anti-black propaganda mills like the Heritage Foundation and the Claremont Institute and the Free Congress Institute and the Manhattan Institute. Joseph Coors was a heavy contributor to the Manhattan Institute. And who is one of the Manhattan Institute's senior fellows? Heather McDonald. She's not the only one, by the way. People like Amy Chua. You wonder where these idiotic books like World on Fire come from. These books that Ann Coulter puts out, who the hell publishes this crap? They're mostly published by these right-wing think tanks. And these think tanks are also the ones who will buy issues of these books in bulk so that these people can sit there and say, oh, I'm a best-selling author. Yeah, that's because the Heritage Foundation bought like 50,000 copies of your book in the first week. It's all a scam, all a game, but it has very dangerous consequences for us, because while they're busy coming up with these lies, sitting here claiming that stuff that they know not to be true, these become the talking points that get repeated on air. And you sit here and see people like Bill O'Reilly claiming that more blacks kill cops than cops kill blacks. And because they're misquoting Heather McDonald, because her original talking point is so convoluted and stupid, people can't remember it. And yet the essential point gets through. The entire point of that lie is so that people can say, is to get people to say. It's not to justify the statement, but it's to get them to say the words, more blacks kill cops than cops kill black people. A total lie. You can prove it a lie in less than 2 seconds, and yet that's where they're going with it. So that's what 2016 has become. You sit here and think that Richard Spencer spewing his talking points, that apparently it's happening just in a vacuum, or that the point is to prove that he's a liar. They don't care whether or not you prove that they're lying. They're trying to reach an audience who does not care about the truth. Recently, there was a town hall, if you will, conducted by Bernie Sanders, and it was on MSNBC, I think, and Chris Hayes was moderating it. And Bernie Sanders it was after the election, Bernie Sanders wanted to talk to some of the people who voted for Trump. And one of the things that they brought up was the whole idea of expelling all the illegal aliens, principally Mexicans. And one of the guys who voted for Trump said, well, you know, we know that Trump is saying that, but it's largely unconstitutional. We don't think such a measure would ever get past the Supreme Court. It would be struck down. Any law that he tries to pass like that wouldn't possibly pass constitutional muster. And to that, Bernie Sanders said, but you voted for Trump anyway, knowing that. And the guy was like, well, yeah. And Sanders was like, do you hear what you just said, sir? You just said that you know that Trump said something that you realized he could not possibly do. and yet you voted for him anyway, knowing that he could not do it. And at that point, the guy was silent. See, they know that all this crap that's being heard are lies. It's not that they don't know. It's that they're looking at the larger agenda. This is what I was talking about when I said that show trials are part of the social compact between the white elites and the white rank and file. It's a means of unifying them behind one will. The hypocrisy and lies and deceit and deception of the white ruling class directly mirrors the deceit, deception, and lies of the white rank and file. So when Richard Spencer gets in front of the camera and gets made a fool of by Roly-Poly Martin, you sit there thinking, oh, we scored some points. No, you didn't. The fact that Richard Spencer got in front of the cameras, that's what he wanted. That's his goal. To show that you can say these things live on air and you're not going to get banned from the airways. You, in fact, will get more airtime. White supremacy's gone mainstream. Donald Trump sits there and retweets white supremacist posts on Twitter, and instead of that being the end of his campaign, it has no effect on it. GQ is not held to account for giving a sloppy kiss or some other form of oral affection to the quote-unquote alt-right. No advertisers pull out. Nobody sits there and says we need to boycott. Nobody sits there and says we need to hold the editors and the publisher of GQ to account. And then next thing you know, Milo Yiannopoulos, who even Ben Shapiro, who I affectionately refer to as BS, had to repudiate as a white nationalist. Now, Ben Shapiro, by the way, he is the quintessential Jewish bigot. And if he sits there and says that Milo Yiannopoulos is a white nationalist, that says something. But this white nationalist has gotten a book deal. I forget who it was, Simon & Schuster, Random House, doesn't matter. But he's gotten a book deal. Now, why on earth would you take a guy who is mostly known for running around in a wife-beater shirt and spewing racist bile against Leslie Jones? What on earth about that makes you think that he is saleable as an author? Milo Yiannopoulos has not said or done a damn thing that would lead anyone to think that anyone outside of the hovel of misfits and nitwits that he caters to online would care about anything he has to say.
Since when does being a certified Twitter troll qualify you to write a book? And if that's the case, there's a whole bunch of idiots out there in their underwear in their mammy's basement who would be sitting up here saying, where's my deal?
Well, I guess since Lena Dunham can sit there and write a so-called book where she openly brags about molesting her younger sister, hell, at this point, I guess all bets are off. Anything goes.
But you know the really dangerous part with this Milo Yiannopoulos and Richard Spencer is the GQ thing. They used to show these people as they were. Now with the story that I posted about Milo Yiannopoulos getting the book deal, if you take a look at it there, boy, he's got the sunglasses on. He's got his hair done up. He's got the little stud earring in his ear. He's got the suit on. I mean, you wouldn't have known the difference between him, that picture, and you would have thought he was a Hollywood star from that picture. Proper lighting and everything. You would not have known that this guy was not a Hollywood actor. You wouldn't have known that he was a white supremacist arch fiend whose only claim to fame is spewing out racist bilge in tweets. You'd never know. Not if you let them tell it. You would never know. And that's what makes it dangerous. This is the year 2016 became the year that white supremacy was sold as sexy. That's the dangerous part about it. That they're just telling you that these are just alternative personalities and not that this is Hitler reincarnated, or worse, in the case of GQ, Joseph Goebbels. They're not telling you that part of it. There was a great documentary that used to be on Netflix about Goebbels. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was talking about the fact that Goebbels had actually gone and he was studying, even back then in the 1930s and 40s, he had been studying movies. Not from around the world. Everybody thinks just movies in America. He was studying movies from around the world because, believe it or not, there was cinema around the world. And he was studying all of it. And when it was time to develop Nazi propaganda, Joseph Goebbels was basically like a film critic, talking about what he thought about Italian movies and French movies and American movies. He felt that American movies were loud and obnoxious, not very well done. The French movies were too slow. He saw things that could be improved upon. So he started working on things like camera angles, like lighting, girls to come up and hand flowers to Hitler. And of course, I think they kind of recreated that. I don't know if it was in the Indiana Jones series. I want to say it was Indiana Jones, where they had Hitler. He was standing up in the car, but the way it looked like he was just floating through the crowd. Well, that was actually based on real film footage. And Joseph Goebbels had set those shots up like that. So that as all the people were standing around giving a Nazi salute, and Hitler's car, Mercedes, would come rolling up, and he was standing up and giving him the salute, you couldn't see the car. All you saw was Hitler's body standing up, basically floating through the people. And you knew he must be staying in a car, but that's because you know what automobiles are. If you didn't know what an automobile was, you would swear this man was just floating. That he was standing and just spiriting himself through the air. Joseph Goebbels understood that this was necessary to project an image. That this man, despite the fact that common sense and physics tell you otherwise, is something more than a man. And now you have watched as professional photographers and corporate magazine outlets are lending their strength to the cause of white supremacy to do for bigots like Richard Spencer and Milo Yiannopoulos what Joseph Goebbels did for the Nazi Party. To sex up white supremacy. To make it sexy, photogenic. Because by doing that, you turn it into something to be aspired to. If they can turn Milo Yiannopoulos into a star, he now becomes something to aspire to. And I wish it just stopped there. I'm going to say this right now, and I'm not giving it with a pinch of salt. I'm saying take this with probably a cup. But there's stories floating around that they want to offer a movie deal to Dylan Roof. Now, a lot of that's speculative. But the fact that apparently there at least is some serious discussion, that tells you something about the era we live in. I said years ago that this was the most dangerous period in history for black people. I said that years ago, that we were entering the single most deadly period in human history for black people. And when you see them start to make magazine centerfolds out of American Nazis, meanwhile they show you as the unkempt thugs. So the guys who want to kill black people got the sunshades and the slick suits and the hair done, looking like movie stars, and black people are shown to be whores, disgusting, ghetto, thugs. They didn't do the GQ treatment for Richard Sherman. And clearly he forgot the lessons of it. They didn't do the GQ treatment for him. Didn't do the GQ treatment for Ray Rice. Didn't do it for him. But for Richard Spencer and the Klan, they can get that. Imagine what will happen next. Just imagine what will happen next if they are going to take... Do you all understand that they're picking every one of the Nazis that you would go after? Every one of these American Nazis you'd go after? They're taking them and elevating their image. Donald Trump's in the White House. Milo Yiannopoulos is in GQ. Richard Spencer's on HBO. Do you understand that all the people that we're taking shots at, the white corporate image machine, is already at work elevating them? Already. They haven't even let these guys get any grass under their feet. Before we can decapitate them, they're already trying to reform their image. That's how deadly this thing is now.
They're sitting here trying to redefine what previously we had gone ahead and established as totally unacceptable. Now it's not. The Nazis and the bigots, they're just controversial. Well, what's totally unacceptable? Well, a black man who calls himself defending himself from a white woman who slaps him in a restaurant, that's unacceptable. Ray Rice, that's unacceptable. Nate Parker, that's totally unacceptable. Full stop. What about Richard Sherman and his pals over here talking about genocide? It's controversial. No, controversial.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't hit a woman. You shouldn't hit a woman. They're showing police out here beating black women into pulp. And that doesn't bother them at all. And we got a bunch of dumb niggas, Jamila Lemieux and her self-hating tribe of nitwits sitting up here playing into it. It's disgusting, brother.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on what you were saying about Joseph Goebbels and the necessity to understand image crafting. See, Intelligent Black Society gets it. Take, for example, 7 a.m., which produced what is, without doubt, the most celebrated image of Umar Johnson. And it's been seen all over the place. That's because Jason understands what the hell he's doing. That's why. Jason understands the use of privileged angles. Jason understands the use of proper lighting. Jason understands the ability to present black luminaries as being men of vision. He gets it. He understands that. Now, you would think that especially with all the pot shots that were taken at Dr. Johnson, that GQ or somebody would have done a spread on him, but they don't. And he's not the only one been left out. There's a number of others who all of a sudden, the white media isn't really interested in them. You would think with all of the police shootings and Black Lives Matters, why you would think that they would be taking some of the LGBTQRXTUV people and deciding to give them the Hollywood treatment, but they're not. Oh, you'll get a one and done byline somewhere, but when it comes time to go ahead and give you the push, when they're not going to sit there and decide that you should have a full professional lighting setup. They ain't doing that. And I guess D. Ray McKeeson's wondering where his book deal is at. Milo Yiannopoulos got it, stupid. So black folks, especially Intelligent Black Society, understand that a large part of our media offensive is going to be us controlling the images. Image training, that's a huge part of the military, by the way. You can go all the way back to the early 20th century. Image training began with having young people watch war movies like All Quiet on the Western Front, which was the first movie, well, not the very first, but it was the first movie about World War I that actually found an audience and even to this day is largely celebrated. And we see how how that was used, image training, to acclimate young men who had never seen a battlefield, to give them a taste of what they can expect. because words on a page only go so far. And from movies like All Quiet on the Western Front, you then had Howard Hughes with Hell's Angels. And then you move forward into World War II. Young people watching movies about the First World War, but even halfway through that, they started developing movies about the Second World War. Everything from Casablanca to Wing and a Prayer. Then you go into the Korean War, and young people were watching movies about World War II. You go into Vietnam, people were watching movies about the Korean War. You go into from Vietnam into the 80s, America's getting involved in these little puddles of spit and grit in Central America, and they're watching movies about Vietnam. Then with the first Gulf War, they're still watching movies about Vietnam. And then the breakthrough occurred in 98 with Saving Private Ryan. Steven Spielberg decides that the best use for cutting-edge special effects is so that you can show people getting chopped up by heavy machine gun fire. And with that, you got Band of Brothers and the Pacific. So all of this white propaganda had come full circle. When you're sitting here trying to run a world empire and keep a stranglehold on the minds of the masses, you gotta make sure that your image training game is on point. I mean, you got this movie coming out, Dunkirk, by Christopher Nolan, and everyone who's seen the trailer talks about this one image in particular, one of the soldiers who's just waiting by himself, wading into the ocean. He's walking into the waves as they come crashing on the beach, and you don't know what's going on. Is he committing suicide? Is he going swimming? They don't know, but it's a striking image. Black people need to understand that. See, too many of us have allowed people who don't really understand how images work to be the ones who are going to be handling our image training game, and it don't work like that. It requires deep thought. It requires people who know what images are good for, so that like a knife, it just cuts you to the bone and you remember it. It has the right impact. A picture truly does speak 1,000 words. And when you see Richard Spencer in GQ, you don't see what was previously understood to be the image of the bad guy. Instead, what you see is a bad boy is what you're seeing. That's what they're setting up. These guys are going to be the bad boys of American political discourse. Bad boys holding up Nazi salutes and talking about how they want the country to be governed by principles different than, say, the Declaration of Independence. Direct quote from Richard Spencer, by the way. So no, when you see Jason and I talking about what it is that you watch on television, we take this stuff dead seriously because we understand what's really going on. Ed Bernero, the creator of CBS's hit show Criminal Minds, he did an interview with Deadline Hollywood, or rather the interview was reposted on Deadline Hollywood, and they were asking him basically about the psychology of television shows. And he was pointing out that CBS's 2.5 Men was an excellent example of basically a network creating a show that hits with female viewers. And the woman who was interviewing Bernero, didn't understand the psychology. She sat there and was like, "Oh, I'm a woman, and when I watch that show, I understand that Charlie Sheen is a boorish, a womanizer, and that basically he's largely there to be seen as the silly guy who the brothers have to put up with." And she was like, "But I still don't understand why women flock to it." And Bernero said, "That's because you got it all wrong. Charlie Sheen's character is the bad boy who females want to save." Think about that. And he pointed out that the success of his own show, Criminal Minds, which is basically the template that most TV dramas use, he says that Criminal Minds' success comes from the fact that it is based on a family. And that you have the leader of the group, who essentially is the father, and that you have his second in command, who essentially is the mother. And he said it doesn't matter if it's male or female. The point is that they fulfill the mother role. They're the one who tells the authoritarian to be nice to the kids. You know, it's kind of like with Star Trek Voyager. Janeway was this father type figure, and Chakotay was essentially the mother figure. She was the one saying we got to be strict and harsh if we're going to get back home. And Chakotay's sitting there saying, well, you got to be nice to the kids because, you know, we don't want to be mean while we're out here on this little journey. Ed Bernero was right. TV shows have an underlying psychology. But black folks don't get that. They don't understand that the people who put this stuff together, when I say that they're not in the business of entertainment, they're in the business of mind control, that's what I mean. There's an underlying psychology that flies right over your head, or rather I should say it flies past the conscious, but it hits the subconscious. It is not harmless when GQ magazine sits here and presents Richard Spencer like a movie star. That is not harmless, because what you also do then is you go ahead and make it not so harmful to present Nazi saluting as being just a bunch of guys with a kind of peculiar way of expressing themselves. So 2016 is the year that the white media decided that they were going to mainstream white supremacy and go hard at it.
We're going to glamorize white supremacy now. And that brings us to the single most significant event of 2016 and probably the 21st century. The election of an official, unabashed white supremacist to the presidency of the United States, not using code words, not using code speak, for the first time since the beginning, since Woodrow Wilson. You have had an outright, out and out, unabashed white supremacist who is now the most powerful individual in the country and who has already handpicked a cabal of racist bigots and demagogues to help him set up his new government. And we can only imagine the amount of damage that they will be able to do. And black people, we helped set this up. We did. We didn't have an agenda 8 years ago, and that's how Barack Obama sailed through. He sailed through promising to be the entertainer-in-chief, the dancer-in-chief, the styling and profiler-in-chief. And the problem is that he's an entertainer, but he's a poor one. And when he set the template that the qualification to be president is how much you entertain people, Donald Trump looked at him and said, wait a minute, I got way more TV experience than he does, and I'm a better salesman. Plus, I'm white. I can out-entertain this Negro. And that's exactly what Trump did. We told the world that dancing the Dougie and singing Al Green qualified you to be in the White House. And then you met a white man who was a better song and dancer than the guy you chose. Doesn't matter if you think he's corny. You're not the majority of the population. The people who count, what he's doing is good enough. Not the best they've ever seen, but good enough. And black people have spent 8 years saying the momentum's behind us because we have the black face of white supremacy in the White House. It's all over but the shouting. And white society showed you just how quickly they can take the reins back from you. They showed you that if they really want control back, they can have it overnight. And the Black Channel is the only place in black society that predicted that that was what would occur. I posted the broadcast saying it. And the rest of the world said no. We said watch it. And I was broadcasting live the night it happened. And all the states that I said it would happen in, and a few states that I was telling you that I didn't predict, all the places I said and a couple of places that I didn't say. Where you get your information matters because it allows you to prepare. I don't know how much respect black society at large has for that. Black folk were instead listening to Roland Martin. This Negro who looked like Uncle Rufus. The next day, you all should have seen him. I put up the pictures. You can see him on my Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I mean, he looked like he didn't bathe. The next day, he just looked, disheveled. That's the civil way of putting it. He said he was in tears. I could believe it. He was crying because Miss Haley wasn't going to be back. And I told you all then, can you imagine what this will look like? Because Donald Trump cannot pass laws, but they already have all the laws in place they need to effectively oppress and persecute black people at an unprecedented level. And I hate to say this. I predicted it, but I hate to say this. I had said, can you imagine what it will be like living under Attorney General Rudolph Giuliani? And I have to tell you all tonight that my expectation that they would choose Giuliani was underestimating them. They chose somebody, Rudy Giuliani, at least would go out there and say he wasn't a bigot. Jeff Sessions was so much of a radical racist that the conservative icon President Ronald Reagan considered him to be too much of a bigot to make just a lowly federal judge. And now he is the top law enforcer in the nation. Imagine who he's going to see as America's top law enforcement problem. And now he has autocratic control and power to target as he wishes. Before now, racial profiling wasn't allowed. Under the imperial presidency of Donald J. Trump, can you imagine what Jeff Sessions, white supremacist certified bigot archfiend, is going to do with that type of power? Can you imagine what he'll be doing? And you're worried just about Jeff Sessions. I'm not worried about Jeff Sessions. I am worried about all of the U.S. attorneys that he will put into place under him around the country. Please remember that that's how Rudy Giuliani got his start, as a U.S. attorney. Can you imagine the types of U.S. attorneys that you will see show up under a Trump administration? And remember, U.S. attorneys are not appointed for life. They serve at the pleasure and the leisure of the president. And the presidents usually outsource those decisions to their attorney generals, because those are the people that the attorney generals have to work with. And Donald Trump clearly knows nothing about judges or attorneys. He's going to turn that over to Jeff Sessions, and Jeff Sessions is going to run wild. There was a famous poll after 9/11 that asked white people who they saw as the preeminent threat in the United States. And can you believe that Arab terrorists came in second on the list? Black people were still seen as the biggest threat in America, as the biggest problem group in America. That was after 9/11. That was after the World Trade Tower attacks. That was after that. And now you're going to see as that mentality is put into law. Now you're going to see what that looks like. You thought stop and frisk was bad in New York. Remember, Donald Trump is the fellow who said that he didn't give a damn if the Central Park 5 were innocent. Hang 'em high! Remember that? He doesn't care if they were innocent. Remember? DNA cleared them. He didn't say anything until it was time for them to get a payout for the years they had spent in prison wrongfully. And he said, no, don't pay them anything. If it had been me, they'd be in the electric chair. Sir, they were innocent. I say they weren't. I'm white and I say so. Before now, he was just a loudmouth white person from New York spewing his nonsense. He was just annoying before. Can you imagine the President of the United States saying, I'm white and I say so? I don't care if you were found innocent through DNA. I don't give a damn about DNA. You're guilty because I'm white and I say so. The DNA says you're guilty, but I'm white and I say the DNA says you're innocent. I'm white and I say you're guilty. And what I say is going to trump the DNA every time. As far as what's going to happen to you. It was funny before. It was annoying before. You think about this now. In 20 days, I'm white and I say so will be the official law of the land. With a hair trigger individual who has stated that he's gonna use it. I did a second advertisement for our new film, Gentrified, where I showed you Donald Trump saying that in order to being a prosperous country, being a rich nation is job number one, but that in order to be a rich nation, you must be a safe nation, which means that we're going to have to help federal and local law enforcement to aggressively pursue crime. So he's telling you going up against crime is how you become a rich nation. Well, guess who crime is just a metaphor for? Locking up as many black folk as you can is what will make you a rich nation. But we got niggas out here dancing the Dougie and talking about how great Obama was. And by the way, many of the laws and unscrupulous tactics that Trump will be able to use were actually ratified under the Obama administration. That's the trade-off they keep doing. Black folk vote for Democrats. The Democrats pass laws but don't racist laws but don't enforce them, and then when the Democrats are out of office, the Republicans use those same racist laws to go after black folk, and then when the Democrats get back into office, it starts the process all over again. This is the single most deadly, dangerous, and frightening event of 2016. Not simply because of him, but now he has thrown open the door to the rest of them. Steve Bannon is an unelected individual. He's window dressing. I'm talking about the people who will be put into positions of power. You thought that the death of Antonin Scalia was the end of it. Trump is going to find somebody so far to the right of Antonin Scalia that it'll touch the left arm coming back. You thought Scalia was the worst you could find. Imagine some of the scum and some of the ogres that Trump and Mitch McConnell and his buddies are going to go dredge up. If they thought Jeff Sessions was suitable to be Attorney General, can you imagine some of the absolute Hollywood cartoon Mr. Sinister villains that they're going to come marching through like the Injustice League? It's going to make the Legion of Doom look calm in comparison. You're worried about the folk you've seen. I'm worried about the ones you won't see. Because it will not be Jeff Sessions who is trying to prosecute us. It'll be some U.S. attorney we never heard of before January 20th. Can you imagine some of the police powers to monitor the Black Channel and places like that? Which they're already doing. What they haven't started doing is prosecuting yet. They haven't started doing that yet. But at this point, Professor Truth, even if they decided not to, what would stop them?
Absolutely nothing. Well, other than intelligent black society, but that assumes that we get our house in order. And we are going to get it in order, and a large part of it's going to be purifying the ranks. That's the reason why we started off the broadcast talking about the dusty crowdfunding hustle backlash. Once we get rid of a lot of this dead weight, things are going to move a lot more smoothly, because we're going to be unapologetic about it. The bad guys happen to be unrelenting, and we will be as well. Though there is one final point that I'd like to add about something that also happened in 2016. As I see it, this is the year that new black media began the process of vaulting the white media wall. And don't call it a breakthrough, but it is the year that we started to put some cracks in the white media wall. From the very beginning, we've told you that our stated goal was to take control of the social discourse within our community and to elevate the debate. And we would take control of the discourse by defining on our terms what is acceptable and what is not. And we were not going to allow anyone and everyone to come along and say, well, shouldn't this go too? No. The white community's stooges and surrogates were being forced to adopt our talking points just so that they could be halfway relevant. People who never said terms like white supremacy were saying it. People who had never said phrases like power, wealth, and influence were saying it. Even if they didn't hear it directly from us, they heard it from people who had come in contact with us. The B1 Brigade can't really be defined as taste makers, because what we do is a hell of a lot more vital than just that. What we do and say here, it may not be seen widespread, but it is felt widespread. And we have created and promoted a vocabulary of real black empowerment. It's a vocabulary that intimidates white power and its allies, and it emboldens those who have been waiting for it. Because what was on the tip of your tongue up until now, we articulated for you. And what you were thinking but probably didn't quite know how to express, or perhaps felt somewhat timid about saying, we gave you both the words and the courage to say it. Intelligent Black Society, the B1 Brigade, successfully challenged all the pathetic narratives that the white media has pushed, and more importantly than that, we here provided a substantive counter-narrative. The old talking points that the white media used and had their black surrogates saying simply weren't going to wash anymore. They found themselves on the defensive, so much so that they're like, well, these guys, we got to take some pot shots at them. People who you hadn't been seeing, you were seeing. Viewpoints that hadn't been heard were being expressed. Sure, they were doing it simply for the sake of trying to call themselves debunking. But the fact that they felt the necessity to admit to what we were doing, that says a lot. They are aware of us, and they are scared, and they should be. Because we're exposing who Black America's enemies are, and we're exposing their tactics. What we comprise here is essentially a shadow media. We're the real dark web, pun intended, because we're the ones who exposed thug for the racist code word that it was, and we shut the white media down when they tried to use it. After we did our raft of broadcasts and videos exposing that term, you had people like Fox News' Howard Kurtzman saying, "When did thug become a bad word?" When you started using it as a racial code word, that's when.
Beyond just that, we shut down their ability to say thug. We shut down their ability to have white Egyptians. We shut down their ability to start saying all lives matter. We took them to the woodshed at every point, at every stop, and we are showing that we are gaining the ability to take control, not just of the narrative, but of the whole damn conversation. And what they're afraid of is the fact that these are terms that they didn't make. These are definitions they didn't approve of. That's what scares them more than anything, that we started to develop our own intellectual and vocabulary ecosystem.
As George Orwell said in his classic book 1984, first they steal the words, then they steal the meanings. That's one of the crucial components of mind control that white supremacy has relied upon. So it matters when we shut them down. When we sit here and make it where their vocabulary is exposed, you're taking away the rhetorical ammunition that they use to justify and sell the idea that black people are the enemy. That hurts them. Because without the words, how the hell else are they going to get the idea out there? How else are they going to normalize it? We put the term white supremacy on the map. And we made that term a regular, normal part of the social discourse. You got all these fakers, frauds, and phonies, these paid-for actors on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and occasionally the Sunday news shows who are sitting here using the term white supremacy because they have to, because they see that everybody in the new black media is saying it. It's like, if we're going to seem like we're talking, it's going to be too obvious that we're dodging the term if we don't use it. So say it. Just say it once. Don't hammer the point. Just say it once. Because you see, up until now, the white media had taken the term white supremacy and they had largely marginalized it. They turned that word into something that black radical weirdos would say. Because they made it where anytime somebody used the term white supremacy, they wanted to make sure that it was some black person dressed up as a caricature of the Black Panthers or somebody who they could lampoon. Only weirdos, black people who are not very smart, use terms like white supremacy. Silly people. You ain't got to take them seriously. Oh, but they're taking us seriously now, and they're not laughing anymore. Even the white chumps on MSNBC, like Chris Hayes, have been forced to say it. Even Bill Moyers, for the first time in his decrepit career, when he was giving his post-mortem of the 2016 election, he devoted the entire end of his speech to pointing out repeatedly that white supremacy was what put Donald Trump in the White House, and he used that phrase. And I'm sitting here going, well, damn, Bill, nice to know that in 84 years you finally got around to using the term. So yeah, the white media has mainstreamed white supremacy, and we mainstreamed calling it out for what it is. We're putting white supremacy's backs to the wall, slowly but surely. And you better believe the bad guys are feeling the heat. And we're forcing them to have to show their hand. We're forcing them to have to go ahead and put their foot soldiers like Richard Spencer out there. And their black surrogates like Jamila Lemieux and Lee Dumbass Daniels and others out there to push the bile. And the Asians. Everyone's being forced to choose a side. They're being forced to declare their loyalties. Ain't gonna be no shades of gray to hide in. Now, we used to have to argue about the basic truths before now, but suddenly we're not seeing people who are so eager to argue with us. A lot of the debates and the what ifs and the yeah buts have stopped. As Jason beautifully put it, stupid now sounds like stupid. Because when you have the luxury of being able to watch your favorite TV show that puts forward a halfway caricature of a colorblind milieu, But then you walk out the door and Michael Slager's shooting you in the back 8 times. Yeah, it's kind of hard to live in the dream world. Olivia Pope is sitting here being the willing bedwench for a white Republican candidate. That's all entertaining and fun until Donald Trump is the Republican in the White House.
Then seeing Omarosa doesn't give you any comfort.
All of a sudden, it's not so much fun anymore. Yeah. As Kwame Ture once said, if you refuse to see the reality of white supremacy, then white supremacy is going to become so belligerent towards you that out of sheer survival, you will have no choice but to acknowledge it and to fight it. That's what's happening here. You're going to have to put, whether you like it or not, you're putting down your toys. Either you'll do it or you can wait until Darren Wilson guns you down and then the iPod falls from your dead, cold hands. And this is good. We're establishing a new cerebral form of political discourse for black people. It starts here. We're showing you exactly how the machinery of white supremacy works and the people who are operating it. We don't do pseudo-intellectualism here. We do the real thing. And we're forcing the people who have chosen to ally themselves with white supremacy to have to come out and defend it. The way that Jason forced Lamar Advertising to expose themselves as part of the propaganda wing of white supremacy. You can go ahead and say that, oh, the police are looking for this black male. The police are looking for that black male. But when you sit there and say the police are killing black people or murdering black people, oh, we can't, Lamar Advertising can't show that. So yeah, 2016 was a year that a whole lot of things happened. But going into 2017, there is a dynamic that we want to make sure changes. And the dynamic is we want to be proactive. We don't want a list where there's only 3 or 4 things that we can point to and say, here's what we did. Here's the hell we raised. Here are the actions that we initiated. We want to put a whole lot more W's on the board. And that begins with us being proactive. Let's put the bastards on the defensive. Make it where they're the ones having to react to what we're doing. They're the ones having to take cover while we drop these bombs. That's got to be the code for 2017. Oh, and on a side note, the Professor Black Truth YouTube channel, I'm proud to say, with your help, broke the 1 million views mark in 2016 and didn't take but 6 months to do it. See, we here aren't looking for the largest audience. The amount of views isn't important. What we need are the most intelligent, most aggressive, and most power-hungry audience. We want to establish intelligent black society as being the nexus for the black elite, so that our people do not fade from the earth.
By the way, Professor Black Truth, in your brilliant white-on-white crime series, I don't know who the guy is. Was it Colin Flaherty or what's his name, Jared, whatever his name is, who said that they would have an award or whatever for somebody who could show them white-on-white crime happening like black-on-black crime does. I wonder if they're going to pay up now that you've been able to go on for month after month after month. I wonder if they're going to pay up now or not, just out of curiosity.
Oh, I'm sure that colon flatulence or whatever clown made that boast, there's no award coming. In fact, there won't even be an acknowledgement of it. But that's okay. I'm not looking to get awards from the opposition, though I am glad to know that these guys, they pride themselves on being able to have a media monopoly. I'm proud of the work that I've done to expose them. I'm proud of the fact that I've allied myself with strong, smart warriors, warrior scholars like Jason Black and others. I'm proud of the work that I've done. I'm proud of the fact that when you had the Birmingham Police Department use a baby as a prop, we exposed them. I'm proud of the fact that when you have these white civil servants, mostly police and firemen, sitting here claiming that Black Lives Matters vandalized their home, or in New York you had an EMT who claimed that he was robbed by some black thugs, we expose these guys. We call them out. We make sure everybody knows who they are. And when Heather McDonald tries to say that more black people kill cops than cops kill black people, I post a video showing that 8 cops were killed in a little over a week, all by white men. I'm proud of the fact that I was spotlighting Dorsey Montgomery, and I was among, if not the first, to go ahead and make sure that there was a video posted somewhere that people could see showing that Dorsey Montgomery was indeed the inside man for white supremacy in the Michael Slager trial. I'm proud of the fact that we've been leading the charge for black jury nullification. Proud of the fact that we've been leading the charge to point out that white supremacy is using show trials, the psychology of how the white illegal system, the white injustice system, props itself up. So yeah, we're giving the bastards hell across the board. And those of you who listen, spread the message, who can be called on to stand up and step forward, you are that shadow army that is putting pain on the enemy. All these things are happening because you are putting your time, your effort, and your money behind it. So there are some black people who get it. We don't want to let this 2016 year in review pass without acknowledging that. There's a lot of work to be done. But you know what? There's also a lot of work that has been done.
Now, we've talked about 2016. It's time for us to discuss 2017 and beyond. Now that the tree of black empowerment is truly bearing fruit on this born day of Dr. John Henrik Clarke, as his life's work is coming to fruition through us, it's time for us to make it very clear, people. Almost 7 years ago to the day, I had made predictions here on the Black Channel about what we would see going forward. I made predictions that outright violence against us would increase. I made predictions that it would be overt. I made predictions that white society as a whole would begin talking about themselves as white people. Something that up until then they wouldn't even say they were white. Now they would talk about the causes of white people, that was about to be invoked as a defense for anything they were going to do against you. Now it is time for us to look forward. As we are making traction, it is not enough. The reason that TV1 and their ilk are now beginning to bow is because we have made inroads, and we made it without them. We did it without them. And we chose targets. Roland Martin decided to side with the bad guys. He became a target. The Black Lives Matter people who were signing on to the nonsense, they became targets. Jamila Lemieux, they became targets. And we are going to need that if we're going to survive. People, if Tom Joyner was going to produce anything for black society other than a damn steamship cruise, he would have done it by now. Tom Joyner has made a bunch of money for himself what in black society has changed because he was there. Show me the white supremacists who are running in fear because of Tom Joyner. I'll wait. I'll wait for that one. Show me the individuals who you go looking for when white supremacy's on the march, when you need a place to gather. Show them to me. They're not there. But they're providing white noise. They're providing chatter. And the truly dangerous thing about someone like Roland Martin is that he just found black empowerment after Hillary Clinton lost. He just found it. No, there's no room for pretenders to the throne. And we're not going to make any progress until we get rid of the Tom Joyners and the Roland Martins and the Don Lemons and all of their kind. We do not want them. They're counterproductive. We do not need them. All these people who are saying whatever they need to say to get a check gotta go. And we at the grassroots have to make that clear. That there's no place for them. That there will be a hard line. And for the first time since Malcolm X, that there will be consequences when you do not stand up in black people's best interests. It is essential that we do that. Going forward, and we must be uncompromising. But furthermore, we must be fearless. We can't have any trepidation about it. They've got to see that we are fearless about this. Totally unafraid. That'll be new for some of you, but we need that. And it starts here. Next, we need to solidify the vocabulary. Power, wealth, and influence. Black empowerment. White supremacy. We have thrust these things into the national psyche and the national conversation. The entire goal of 7 a.m. was to make it clear to people that the answer to white supremacy was black empowerment, and black empowerment is spelled one way: dollars. And that is why when the police ran wild, black people lined up to go to the bank. The message is getting through. People are understanding they did not run for the politicians, they ran for the bank teller. That means you're starting to get it. It's a shame it took so many deaths, but the message is starting to get through. That you stop Richard Spencer with your bank account, not your mouth. He's counting on financial support, and he will get that. The only way you're going to fight him is with finances. That's the only way it'll occur. But the other side of the equation is that we must have a code, people. And I want to make it very, very clear that you have to understand the code must be uncompromising. I am not interested in unity. Roland Martin, if you're going to quote what I say and try to co-opt it and plagiarize it, at least make sure you do it correctly, fella. I was the first person to say I didn't give a damn about black unity. People looked at me like I grew horns out of my neck when I first said it. Today, everybody is saying it. To hell with black unity. If David Clark, if me getting along with David Clark is black unity, you can kiss my ass with black unity. If black unity means I gotta get along with Jamila Lemieux and Stacey Dash, if black unity means I gotta be able to get along with Lee Daniels and Clarence Thomas, you can go to hell with your black unity. I'm not the least bit interested in black unity. I am only interested in black empowerment. And as time goes on, I am less and less interested in the idea of justice as a singular entity. I'm not interested in justice. I'm interested in empowerment. You give me power, I will make my own justice. And a lot of you are going to have to get over the idea that justice requires fairness. We do not require fairness. We require empowerment. And from there, you will get justice. I don't have to take into account what's happening to anyone else in order to have justice. And right now, we're being told that we have to negotiate for our damn lives. And if you get murdered by some white person, and if they go into court and find them guilty, oh well, let the system work. That's the best we can hope for. That's the best we can hope for. That's all we can get. That's all we can get around here. No, brothers and sisters, it is time for you, in the words of Nat Turner from the Nate Parker film, I would teach you a new song. It is time tonight for you to learn a new song to sing. The children of Africa do not want unity. We want empowerment. The children of Africa do not want power. We do not want justice. We want power. And from there, we will create justice. The children of Africa are not here to ask you for our freedom. We are going to grab our dollars and we will take our freedom. We will take it from your hands, or we will take it with our fingers around your throat, one or the other, but we will have it. The children of Africa are not interested in integration. It has been proven to be a lie and an abject failure. And I would teach you a new song to sing. That the only neighborhood that you have to seek out is one where you are at peace with yourself. But this idea that the only peace you can have is outside of your people is a lie. You've been chasing it for 500 years and ain't got it yet. You can't integrate these neighborhoods because every time 5 of you move in, they all move out. You can't show me a black neighborhood where the housing values go up as more black people enter it. You can show me majority black neighborhoods, but you can't show me one where the housing values start skyrocketing because you're coming in. And the children of Africa are no longer interested in this fool's errand of integration. That was the goal of the sycophantic, inferiority complex-stricken olders and elders of the days of old. The children of Africa are not interested in singing about peace. The children of Africa are saying, our lives matter. The children of Africa are saying, our children's lives matter. And to gaining the peace we are looking for, the children of Africa say, all guns matter. Especially black guns matter. Yeah, said it just like that. And you can take them from our cold, dead hands. Last but not least, there is no place for anybody who does not sign on for this vision. You have tried everything. You have tried to hide. You've tried to cower. You've tried to cringe in the corner. You have tried everything on this earth except the one thing that does work. Empowerment is the only thing that works. Buying shoes doesn't work. Being a slut doesn't work. Single motherhood doesn't work. Cooning doesn't work. Begging doesn't work. Hoping that Miss Hilly gets elected so you can keep your little penny in the ass job doesn't work. Dancing on the table doesn't work. Hear me, designer? None of that works. This is the only thing that works. It is the only thing that ever has, and it's the only thing that ever will. And you will accept it or you will perish. And in the words of our immortal elder, Dr. John Henry Clark, I do not believe that fate brought us this far just to see us die here. I do not believe it brought us this far to see that happen. Professor Truth, I'll let you have the last word.
Since we've been sitting here talking in part about media, there is one film which will go unnamed that I want to quote from with this end of the 2016 year in review. And the quote is, "We have achieved our current position through poise, precision, and audacity. To this, we must also add resolve." Power is properly defined as the ability to define yourself and your relationship to everyone else in such a way that your definition becomes theirs. This is the goal of intelligent black society. This is what power means. And this is the next stage of the war that we're going to be going into. Intelligent black society has begun the process of defining itself. We will fine-tune, augment, and strengthen that ability to define ourselves so that it cannot be changed. And once we've solidified an iron grip on our own image, that's when we're going to start to push the bad guys back. We will begin to define them, and that's when they're really going to lose their minds. Right now, they're mad as hell that we're making it where they no longer have a cakewalk when it comes to demonizing us and telling people what black people are. They're mad at the fact that every once in a while we successfully hand them an L on the propaganda front. Well, what comes next is really going to make them hot under the collar. We're going to tell the truth about white supremacy and how the dominant society benefits from it. That it is an open secret that they've all signed on to it. And we will fight to ensure that this becomes the social narrative. And there will be no competing narratives allowed. Notice the wording that I use, allowed. It ain't going to just be putting out content. At some point, you're going to have to start choosing targets and overrunning the enemy's position. Because the Jews didn't want to have to debate with anyone about the Nazis. That's the lesson that they took out of the Second World War. They weren't looking to debate whether or not the Nazis were good or bad, or whether or not the final solution was justified, even in a rhetorical sense. And that's the reason why they constantly remind you of the Nazis. Every year we get some TV show, some movie, some miniseries, and here we go. Because the Jews are not about to give anyone a chance to get a word in edgewise. Not about them, you won't. That's what Nate Parker did with his movie. And the dominant society recognized the threat that even this minor, meager effort represented. The question is, do you? It matters that we cultivate our own media, because they're killing us with the images. They're justifying their war on us with the images. And they're using those images as a form of mind control to confuse a lot of black people. That's why you got black people sitting here, grown men, allegedly grown women, sitting here dressing up as anime characters. While Tamir Rice is being gunned down, you're sitting here thinking that it's cute to let your black children watch Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel. The reason that we started off like this, the reason that Jason and I have chosen the agenda that we're pursuing and the road that we're taking here, is because we understand that power is used as a shield long before it's used as a sword. That's why we've put such emphasis on acquiring media real estate, building platforms, and making sure that we can get our message out there. So let's put together an impenetrable defense. And from this starting point, we're going to promote an invincible offense. Black first.
In the upcoming weeks, you are going to see us heavily promoting our new film, Gentrified, Ethnic Cleansing American Style. And if you're one of the few people who hasn't heard about it, go to our website, youwillbemoved.org. That's youwillbemoved.org. It is the single most pressing event of our time, and this film is going to encapsulate everything, how we are being geographically, economically, and militaristically gentrified and ethnically cleansed from the American landscape. And now, with Donald Trump as president, this issue of being ethnically cleansed is now on the front burner. We went coast to coast, and we'll cover it everywhere. It is essential that every single black person in every one of these cities that we will be in and beyond, doesn't matter if you walk, drive, crawl, get a friend to take you, you want to see this, because you will be in the room and in the theater with hundreds of other black people. And of course, we are doing as we always do. There will be an after the movie time period where you will be able to talk with other people there, and you'll be able to collaborate with them, and you know that they're serious because they paid to get in just like you did. This is the event. It is essential that you be there. February 2017, go to our website, youwillbemoved.org. That's youwillbemoved.org. Gentrified, Ethnic Cleansing American Style. Watch it, or don't. That's the other reality that we have to face. There are whole cities with suicidal black people in them. Whole cities where black folk have just surrendered to their fate. Baltimore comes to mind. St. Louis comes to mind. Where they've just thrown up their hands and surrendered and said, let the devil have me. But for those of you who have not signed on to go gently into that dark night, go there, get involved, show up, and as always, make sure that you are there to build up, tool up, and then finally we can start discussing settling up. And if you have not seen our first film, it's just a journey in the process, especially when you see the beginning of Gentrified. If you have not seen our first effort, 7 a.m., the first documentary in history to focus on black entrepreneurship, you want to get that also. Go to 7ammovie.com. That's the number 7ammovie.com. Get your copy today and join us in February where we take this show on the road. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the BlackChannel.net radio program. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority, sitting in with Professor Black Truth. And until next time, brothers and sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.